Hi, my name's Jack. I run a company called TamationGames. I've been developing and publishing games under the brand for about 4 years now. You've most likely heard me from the You Have 10 Seconds series. Back in 2016, a game I made in one night at a sleepover gained the attention of Markiplier, Crank Gameplays, Egoraptor, Mortimer, Eric Van Wilderman, Merg, and more. Even though looking back the game wasn't all that well made, it was still a big honor for them to play it. My games since then have improved in quality a lot, and while they've never quite been recognized at the same level of popularity as You Have 10 Seconds was, I've had a lot of fun developing them over the years. But there's been one concept for a game I've always had that I've never quite been able to recognize. I've always wanted to make a Gameboy game themed around space. In October of 2016, I competed in that year's GBJAM, a game competition where you have to make a Game Boy inspired video game in pretty much about a week. I made a little Metroidvania in 3 days about an alien traveling from planet to planet. Not much of a storyline and some hilariously broken gameplay mechanics, but I was 15 at the time, and relatively new to programming all things considered. What can I say?
Lost Alien by TamationGames is a simple Metroidvania. You start out in a planet looking for several parts of your ship. Once you get them and return to your ship, you can now fly to several different planets, all of which must be played in a specific order. So you go to this planet and pick up a gas mask so you can go to a toxic planet, fight a boss, so you get the air tank, which can be used on the water planet as you explore to unlock the double jump, and this game was made in just 3 days, are you kidding me?
2 years later, in summer of 2018, I started recreating that game with an improved engine and graphics. It looked a lot more polished and had a lot of new features, but eventually I didn't feel I could expand upon the original concept anymore, and so I abandoned it. Now starting off 2019, I'm taking my dreams of making a game about space into a different direction. A Galaxy Apart is scheduled to be my 5th commercial game, and my completed vision for a Game Boy space title. Sounds crazy making a Game Boy game in 2019, but I love the aesthetic a lot. It's a story about 2 aliens separated in a meteor accident who have to make their way back to one another. There's procedural world generation, construction, crafting, resource gathering, combat, a day-night cycle done with palette swaps, and a whole lot more. I always try and push myself farther and farther when it comes to making new projects, and this is no exception. The thought of even having a fully working inventory system would have sounded, no pun intended, alien to me just a year ago, and yet here I am. So now that I'm a month into development, I want to start documenting the creation of this game. There's still a lot left to work on, but I really hope this ends up being the space game I always wanted to make. And hopefully if you're fascinated by the process of programming logic or game design, this will be interesting for you too. So with that, here's the process of making a Galaxy Apart. A Galaxy Apart's main map is comprised of 104 sections. They're all randomly generated at the start of a playthrough. The map itself is surrounded by 4 outer walls, with 1 guaranteed cave entrance spawning at the back section of the wall. The rest, completely randomized. The way I've handled the world generation in this is pretty similar to another prototype project I was working on back in 2018 called Darknasia. Each one of these sections is split into a 160 by 144 pixel square, the same resolution as the original Game Boy. Within these squares are 56 tiles, which can be all used to spawn various environmental objects such as trees, rocks, flowers, and more. The tiles are first broken into basic binary, with zeros indicating a blank space and ones indicating an object can spawn there. The ones are then randomly translated into letters, and each letter corresponds to a different object, T being for trees, B being for berry bushes, R for rocks, and so on. This process repeats for all sections of the map until every one of the 104 sections is filled. I settled on using this method to force the game to space out its spawning of environments. The previous methods I used for just randomly creating objects wherever it could find open spaces caused a lot of uneven generated terrain, and I wanted something a bit more satisfying to look at. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule. On rare occasions, a spawn block using this world generation system can become seeded, and it will instead run a script to create a special type of terrain. Villages, rivers, and extremely rarely, smaller caves can be spawned this way. I wanted to make sure no map generation would be the same, so so adding in these seeded spawns in the wilderness of binary blocks help differentiate the world and create landmarks. Once the entire map has been randomized and formed, exactly 10 of these spawn blocks have a chance of being set as the starting spawn point. The player is then spawned in, given a small opening cutscene, and the world is free to explore then. Now this may sound extremely complicated, but when converted to code and being run in real time, this entire process I just explained to you takes place in less than a second. I'm gonna be honest, the way I program the inventory system is probably absolutely appalling to programmers with more experience than me. My main genre of game is usually simple retro platformers, so programming a survival style inventory system was all foreign to me. So, with that being said, here's what I ended up doing. 8 inventory slots. Each slot has a separate variable assigned to it, one for slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, and etc. Each item in the game has an ID assigned to it, stone block, berry, leaf, mushroom, etc. When the player collides with an item, I have scripts run to first check, is the ID of the item you're picking up already occupying one of the existing slots? If so, stack the item and add one to that slot. If it's not, it will then check if there's an open slot and slot the item in there to begin a stack. All the crafting stations in the game like workbenches, looms, and anvils have similar scripts in nature to check this if you have a specific item in your inventory, and more importantly, scripts allow them to check the amount of an item you have. I'm aware systems like this could probably be set up a lot easier using a DS grid, but I have very limited experience using those, and I felt by creating my own inventory system from the ground up with variables, I could have more control over it in the future. Now let's talk about the way you actually get stuff into that inventory system. You start with 3 tools, an axe, a pickaxe, and a sword. All 3 of these can be upgraded using an anvil, but the basic rules of them are as follows. Axes can be used to chop down trees and other wooden environmental objects, pickaxes are used for mining stones and ores, and the sword is used for enemy combat during the nighttime or while underground. You also technically have a 4th hidden tool, which is your hand. By pressing the interact button when facing certain objects, you can shake berries out of bushes, pick up flowers for potions, mushrooms, collect fruit, and a whole lot of other stuff. When the world is interacted with in this way, resources will almost always drop from it, and the inventory scripts mentioned earlier will run to allow you to collect all the cool stuff you find, or save it for later when it may be useful to you. I'm gonna wrap up this video here since I've probably already rambled on for quite a bit about this project. If this was fascinating to you and you want to learn more about this game before the next video comes out, you can follow my Twitter where I'm constantly tweeting about what's going on. I'll also be working on a sequel to this video in the next few weeks as more of the game is finished, where I'll cover what's new, the combat system, and some sound design aspects. Thanks for watching.